Saturday View with Ronan Berry. With thanks to Lumclean Energy, pioneering innovation, powering progress. LumcleanEnergy.com. Call 0818 300 103. Text or WhatsApp your Saturday View to 083 3010 103.
And a very good morning to you. Ronan Berry here with you, and it is time for your Saturday View. If you want to get in touch with me today, the quickest and easiest way, text or WhatsApp 083 3010 103, or you can give us a call on 0818 300 103 either. And lots for us to get stuck into this morning, including will the upcoming election, the general election, provide a golden opportunity to co-opt female candidates onto our local authorities. Also, Fine Gael is promising that it will introduce a dedicated offence for attacks on retail workers if it is returned to government after the election. And given that the government is outgoing now and the election has finally been called, seeing as Simon Harris sought the dissolution of the 33rd Dáil yesterday with President Michael D. Higgins, we'll take a quick look back at the last 5 years. Believe you me, an awful lot has happened. Huge amounts of stuff. We've had 3 Taoiseach, we've had 5 budgets, we've had Golfgate, remember that? It seems like a long time ago, but that was within the term of this existing government. We look back at all the various kind of key items, and particularly the pandemic, Brexit, the invasion, wars across Europe, the increasing cost of living, lots to look back on and do a kind of an appraisal of sorts of the government's performance. That's one that you can have your view on too. Let me know, where do you rank the outgoing governments in terms of its performance, maybe 1 to 10. Tell me how you rated and why. So if you want, 083 3010 103, text and WhatsApp there. And also, the spirit of community activism and volunteerism is alive and well in County Laois. And last night, the Laois Community and Voluntary Awards were held in the Midlands Park Hotel. Very little bit later on, we'll meet the chairperson of the Laois Public Participating Network to talk about the awards last night and to just give us a sense of the scale of what is happening in County Laois, and happens right across the Midlands too. And there's always so many amazing voluntary organisations. Our little spotlight this morning though going to County Laois. But I'll begin on that item of, posters are going up already. They're even up before Simon Harris went to the Dáil yesterday morning. They were actually going up on poles right across the Midlands, right across the country too. So yes, we're now into full general election mode. Very short campaign, but just over 3 weeks leading us up to the actual day of voting on the 28th of November. But what opportunities might the upcoming election provide for females and women in politics? Well, if we look at the local elections, we know even across Laois, Offaly, Westmeath, quite a large amount of sitting county councillors have declared themselves as candidates for the upcoming general election. If we look closer at the general election results and a survey carried out by See Her Elected, its analysis showed that in the 2024 local elections, 85% of sitting candidates were re-elected, securing 72% of council seats. And that success rate was consistent across genders, with 86% of female incumbents and 88% of male incumbents being re-elected. So it shows that people who have had a presence on the council have a high chance of getting re-elected again. It even goes on to show that if somebody only has had a short term in office on a county council, it can make a major and drastic difference in terms of them being re-elected and indeed in growing their profile too. And this maybe provides an opportunity for female candidates in particular, given that quite a few of our local sitting councillors may become TDs post-general election. Well, to look at this a little bit deeper, I'm delighted to be joined by one of the founders of See Her Elected, Dr. Michelle Maher. Very good morning, Michelle.
Good morning, Ronan. How are you?
Michelle, this has been kind of said in some circles as being a golden opportunity for female candidates. Would See Her Elected concur with that?
Yeah, we certainly would. And it was actually us who raised this first and put this information out there. And, I suppose while the rest of the country is focusing on the general election, what we're doing in See Her Elected is we're looking beyond the general election for this massive opportunity that exists now, especially for political parties, to do something about the low number of women in our county councils across the Midlands and across rural Ireland in general.
Those numbers in particular, can you give us an idea of maybe the representation at present and where ideally you'd like to see the representation grow to?
Well, I suppose that overall in the country, something like 26 of all of the county councillors are women, but those figures are really heavily skewed by the councils in Dublin and even the councils around it. So, you look at some of the Dublin councils, the councillors there, half of them are men and half of them are women. And, even the counties around it, like, I'm talking about Louth or Meath or Kildare or Wicklow, are, at least a third, if not more. But, when you go out then in any direction from Dublin, you're finding fewer and fewer female councillors. And, Laois, for example, has 5 out of the 19 there. Oxley doubled its number of female councillors in the last election from 2 until 4. So it was a massive improvement for them and actually puts them, quite high up the league table in terms of the number in percentage terms. Westmeath, unfortunately, went down from 4 female councillors to 3. But what we do know is that an awful lot of council seats will become vacant during the general election. After the 2020 general election, there was something like about 60 council seats became vacant because councillors either became TDs or became senators. Now, like when there's a vacancy, we would all know that if a TD retires or resigns or sadly dies, that there's a by-election, that everybody in the constituency goes out and votes for that replacement. It's a completely different system for the county council. So, if there's a vacancy in the county council, for example, if some of the, I think it's 10 or 12 councillors from across the Midlands are hoping to get elected to the Dáil, and very best of luck to all of them. But legislation allows that a vacancy in a county council seat, it can be filled by the political party if the person vacating their seat was a member of the party, or if they're an independent, and I know there's at least one independent running. I'm not sure with the election announced, am I allowed to say names? I probably won't. But, there's at least one independent county councillor running in Westmeath, and in that case, there's usually standing orders in the county council itself which dictate how that seat is filled.
I think nationally, I think there's 120 councillors approximately are seeking election, the general election too. But the last local election cycle, according to research, showed that 52% of co-option were female. So, clearly there are signs that it is a way of bringing up the number of female representatives.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. When people are going out to vote, they're voting their existing county councillors back in huge numbers. But what they're not doing is that they're not taking into account whether that councillor is a man or a woman. So they're not voting on the gender of the person. So, the 80, the numbers are in the 80% of the sitting female councillors who were running to keep their seat got re-elected, and the same percentage of the men. It just produces more men because there's more men in the system. And in comparison, new candidates, so if you were running not being a county councillor, only 17% of the women who were running and 21% of the men running one council seat. That's a massive difference between the 80% statistic for people who are already councillors. And that's why the general election is so important for equality between men and women in councils.
And of course, he also showed, though, that if somebody is co-opted onto a council, even for a short period of time, it itself can be a major catalyst towards, increasing their profile and increasing the chances then of them being re-elected either to local councillors or maybe even to the Dáil.
Yeah, it's to do with the name recognition and their profile. And actually, I just listened to your introduction there, and congratulations to all the community activists and volunteers who were honoured last night. That's where you often find women in the fore, working flat out and at the coalface of their community. And I think it's really important that people recognise the value of that work that often women are doing in community and voluntary groups in our area. And becoming a county councillor is almost a natural extension of that work. So it would be great to see more women, recognised or being recognised for the work that they do in our communities, and how valuable that work would make them as county councillors.
Absolutely,
but,
and
I suppose.
We'll hear some great examples from County Laois of that towards the end of the show as well. And, I suppose one thing, we have a 3-week election campaign coming up, which is probably one of the shortest ever, so it won't take too long until the numbers start coming in. What are your hopes and expectations?
Well, I think, there's a large number of TDs for starters, going from 160 until up to 174. We also have quotas in place for general elections, which we don't have when we have our local elections for county council seats. And for that quota increased since the last election up to 40%. So that meant that every political party, to hang on to its funding that it gets from government, has to have at least 40% of their candidates have to be men and 40% of them have to be women. So that's already increased the number of women who are running in this election. And I think the larger number of TDs and the amount of retirements, especially out of Fine Gael, should see an increase in the number of women in our Dáil. That's what we would hope for. But in See Her Elected, I suppose our focus is beyond that. And what we really want is political parties to have equity and political representation as really their guiding principle after the general election, so that women are co-opted into those vacant seats. And I'm especially talking about Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, who ran the lowest number of female candidates back in June's local elections. And I suppose that the polls suggest that those two parties might do quite well on the 29th of November. So now they have a golden opportunity to practice what they preach. I'm listening to political parties for 5 years now talk about how important it is to them to have more women in county councils. And in fact, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, along with the Green Party, they put it in writing in their last programme for government, and they used the word determined. They were determined to change things when it came to women in county councils. Well, now they can. With one action, they can improve female representation across the country. And because we know people overwhelmingly vote for their councillors, the parties are also dramatically improving the chances of those women, should they run in the next local elections, to keep their seats.
Well, and your research and your surveys bear out that as well. Dr. Michelle, thank you so much, because it really is going to be an interesting one, given, as you say, so many TDs, sitting TDs aren't rerunning, and given the number of councillors that have put themselves forward too, it does, by all accounts, sound like a golden opportunity as well. Dr. Michelle Maher, co-founder of See Her Elected, thank you so much for that this morning. And Michelle is based in County Westmeath, and See Her Elected is funded by the Irish Government's Department of Housing, Local and Government Heritage, and it is set out with that objective of addressing the underrepresentation of women in county councils and in electoral circles right across the country. Time now for a quick break. After that, we're going to look at a pledge by a government party that if they are re-elected, they will make offences and threats and assaults against people in the retail sector a standalone offence. That's coming up now in just a couple of moments. Right now across the Midlands, it's heading for 12 degrees.
Saturday View, with thanks to Lumcloon Energy, pioneering innovation, powering progress. LumcloonEnergy.com.
Very shortly, we'll take a look back at the performance of the outgoing government, and it can almost be divided into the COVID years and then the post-COVID years. And if we think of COVID, remember all the screens that went up in shops and retail outlets all across the country and remained for a couple of years, and many of them are gone now again. But if recent reports and statistics are to be believed, we might need to see screens back in our shops again, but more for security rather than just for public health reasons, because this is a kind of an ever-present topic. And a few weeks back, I was covering for Will Faulkner on Midlands Today, and we spoke to people from the retail sector and about the issues of both defamation cases being taken against them, but also highlighting the amount of crime that's taken place as well. A survey by Shelf Life magazine found that 89% of retailers say crimes involving their businesses have become more dangerous in the last year, and also that 100% of retailers have faced some form of crime in the past 12 months. And that report goes on with lots of kind of concerning statistics on it too. We heard from a shop owner who said it's costing him about 50,000 per shop per year on average, justified cases of defamation where somebody's accused of maybe shoplifting or of threatening staff in a shop as well. So really exacerbating an issue on it. But Fine Gael, if re-elected, and particularly Minister Peter Burke has promised that they will look at making a tax on retail workers a standalone offence if they get back in. Well, Martin Mulligan is president of the National Federation of Retail Newsagents and Owners, and he owns Mulligan's Londis, Circle K and in Athlone as well. Very good morning, Martin. Is the threat that real for people in the retail sector?
Very much so, very much so. It varies so from town to town, city to city. But some people will be very, very badly affected. See, those perpetrators of crime have free legal aid. There's no consequences. Even if you go to court, there's absolutely no consequences to those people.
What sort of threats are people in retail seeing, maybe on an almost weekly basis at this point, I guess?
Well, take the simple one, when we have to verify age, and you get a barrage of abuse. So some people, when they're challenged for ID or for age, they may not have it and they just leave, and then some partner or somebody comes in and verbally abuses them, shouts and screams at them, and very, very threatening for staff. Very, very. The job is hard enough without the abuse. And
in a situation like that, are staff, did you report it to a manager or do you pick up the phone and maybe ring the Gardaí at this point, or has that proven futile?
In some senses, it has proven very, very successful. But when you, a lot of people just kind of take it now and say nothing and just kind of ignore what's kind of the shoplifting that's going on. Don't want to get involved. Don't want to see it. But the other side then is the business goes down the tubes. Is the shoplifting continues at the rate that's going on.
Okay, so you've shoplifting, you've verbal attacks on it as well. Is there an increased risk, or a sense that there's an increased risk of a physical attack? Is that a thing now with staff?
Yeah, it's a fear. It's a fear that I meet those people after. I meet them in the pub. I meet them socially or something, and I'll be attacked when I'm going home or something. Or it's a huge fear.
Yeah, I
suppose there certainly has to be accountability.
Yeah, we never think of actually sometimes the follow-on, as you say, it could be somebody, that fear that afterwards or back out in the normal week, going to school, going to work, whatever, that there might be a retribution or something if somebody is refused to.
Yeah.
So from...
This is the fear.
Yeah. From your point of view then, as an owner and a manager, how has your approach to it changed over the last couple of years? And was there a point in time where it just seemed to get worse?
Yeah, it's steadily getting worse. People are challenging you on anything and everything, and the perspective is that they're always right. We even had it down to the possible return scheme for the bottles when people were bringing in vouchers from other machines looking to get paid, and threatening all sorts of legal action on us, but they just don't want to listen.
Yeah. Well, you'd imagine getting exercised over a deposit return scheme as well, but it kind of goes
Well, if you're even taking the post office now, if you have to purchase a postal order or something, you've got to have your name, address, date of birth, and when you ask for that, you get a reaction kind of straight away. Why do you want this? Like we're only complying with the law, and but we're constantly challenged on particularly date of birth and IDs. But if we had the national card, if everybody had to have the national identity card, it would help in that sense.
And I know we are into election season quite firmly now, and Peter Burke, as sitting Minister for Enterprise, Trade and Employment, has said that if Fine Gael were re-elected, they would look at bringing in a dedicated offence for attacks on retail workers. They've also said they would provide additional resources to enhance security, whether through hiring security personnel or installing CCTV. Would either of those actions actually help, do you think? Would bringing in a standalone offence, would that make an actual difference?
A standalone offence would actually make a difference, yes. But we've had this discussion with all politicians over a good many years. We've made submissions, we've talked to them, and they all agree it shouldn't be happening. But the promises are never kept. We want to see a little bit of action on behalf of independent retailers now. We just have enough.
Absolutely, yeah. No, you can hear it. And I said we spoke to one or two retailers there a few weeks back on Midlands Today, and there was a kind of a similar sense of almost at the wit's end. This has gone on too long and too far as well. And look, at Martin, thank you for coming on this morning as well and just highlighting that it's a very real story, and it sounds very, very present and a real threat. Something that you expect the next government will take immediate action on.
Well, hopefully someone will do something soon.
Absolutely. No, it sounds like it's badly needed. Anyway, Martin Mulligan, President of the National Federation of Retail Newsagents and of course the owner of Mulligan's Laundis, Circle K in Athlone. Thank you so much for that this morning. There you go. Have you noticed that? Have you noticed across, when you're out doing your shopping, is there a change in people's behaviours? Are people getting more aggressive when it comes, even simple things like Martin has pointed out, proving your ID, proving your age, showing ID. Imagine getting aggressive because the bottle you bought wasn't eligible for the bottle return scheme or something like that. Really, it's if that's affected you, let me know. 083 30 10 103, text or WhatsApp number. Go take a short break now. After that, we'll have a quick look back through the last 5 years and in terms of the performance of the outgoing government.
Saturday View, with thanks to Lumcloon Energy, pioneering innovation, powering progress. LumcloonEnergy.com.
Well, bar you were hiding under a rock for the last couple of days, you will know that the general election has finally been called. 29th of November will be the day that we can all go to the polls if we're eligible to vote. If you are, all I can do encourage you is to go and use that vote. But what have the last 5 years thrown up for us in terms of the government? Well, there was a lot of firsts indeed. We saw a coalition between the good old Civil War parties, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, of course, propped up by the Green Party too. We've had 3 Taoiseach, we've had 5 budgets, we've had a COVID pandemic, we've had Brexit, we've had Russia invading the Ukraine, we've had a lot of instability in the Middle East, we've had rising costs of living, we've had inflation, there was a certain bike shed thrown into that as well, and many other things that have happened. And it really, I find when you reflect on it, you think back looking at the 5 years going, wow, was that really within the period of this government too? So certainly kind of a unique time. But let's try and take an attempt at appraising the government and seeing how it rated overall in terms of its performance. And we can probably split it into kind of 2 main areas, probably the COVID years and also then the post-COVID years, because bear in mind the election happened in February 2020 and it wasn't until June that the government was actually formed. So the existing government then kind of took the reins in terms of managing the fallout from the COVID pandemic. But to look back on this, we have economic spokesperson from Mullingar Chamber, Geoghegan, on the line. John, a very good morning.
Good morning, Ronan, and thanks for having me on.
John, we've discovered as we started looking into this, there was so much has happened over the last 5 years. We're going to kind of distill it down into key points. I even mentioned it there off air. Golfgate was one of those things that happened too. So we've also had probably one of the shortest ministerial reigns ever, unfortunately. So what were key points for you as you look back on that? And I guess from a probably more business context.
Yeah, look, Golfgate was very unfortunate, I would think. It was probably a poor choice by people who attended it, and unfortunately, given the times that were in it, there was a high price to be paid, particularly for of Phil Hogan. And losing your European Commissioner is an awful thing to happen to a country like Ireland, where we rely so heavily on exports. But they were difficult times, and it was a high price to pay in a very difficult time.
But probably the fallout from that, again, losing that position, probably not as much as originally feared.
Probably not, but if you look at where we are now with Michael McGrath in legal affairs in Europe, we've really stepped back into the second tier, I would think, at a European level.
You think that was a direct link as well, but I suppose it was a unique one too. When it was
a bad example maybe of when things go wrong.
They go really wrong too, and of course there was other fallout, particularly kind of in the Ministry of Agriculture there too. But if we look at that whole period, well, we saw Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil coming together, even though Sinn Féin had polled really, really well, and how times kind of change based on the latest opinion polls and stuff like that too. But this government took off. I suppose COVID was the first thing that it really had to kind of take a handle, and we can probably all remember Leo Varadkar's address from the US when he first announced that we were going to go into lockdowns. Businesses really were fearful after the first months that nobody knew what was going to happen. The government's response to that?
I think it was an incredible achievement what they achieved as a coalition. I mean, they were dealing with the most difficult situation imaginable, and nobody knew how bad it could turn out. When the Italian thing broke early in COVID, I mean, there was people dying in Lombardy from COVID-19 in hospitals, and the country shut down. It was frightening when you think back to it. And I thought the parties did really well. They worked well. They showed great leadership. The 2 leaders were outstanding, Eamon Ryan as well. And we got through it as a country, and fair play to the businesses too out there, who managed to mullock through an incredibly difficult situation. And through that period, our economy has actually grown by 20% since 2020. It's unbelievable how well Ireland has performed. And I think a lot of it goes down to hard work on the ground by lots of people and excellent leadership at the top.
And I guess that with COVID in particular, there seemed to be almost no end to the money that was being put to back businesses, to back people in employment too. And yet we still see a few years later that lots of sectors, particularly hospitality and the smaller businesses and retail, still suffering.
Oh yeah, COVID really changed how we live in Ireland, and unfortunately there seems to be a major long-term effect in the leisure and hospitality sector, in the small businesses on the street. And I think it's top of the agenda in the outgoing government when they come back in, between housing, healthcare, and really the street and the bars and the restaurants, how to support them. And I wouldn't think they'll be found wanting when they assemble the next government.
Housing, of course, an area you're quite familiar with yourself, given your business background too. Overall, how did this government perform? And, factoring in that you would have had a lot of disruption to the sector with COVID and shutdowns.
Yeah, you have to remember, 10 years ago, houses were being sold for less than they cost to build in Ireland, And really in the last 5 years, construction inflation has risen by 25-30%. And house prices have nearly doubled in the last 6-7 years. So it's an incredible marketplace. I think they've done a reasonably good job. They haven't solved it. And they really have to get on with it now when they form a new government, I think. And it's the biggest issue out there, unfortunately. It ranks ahead of healthcare. And that's crazy that we have housing as a bigger problem than healthcare. And I think that they have the right tools now, but they have to tackle it. And it's all about supply. And in my view, it's all about zoned land and getting land zoned for housing and sold and built.
And in terms of the numbers, and there's often lots of dispute about the numbers being used and what's actually being built year on year as well. Where do we need to be, do you think, to actually really start bringing about a solution to this housing crisis?
There's loads of expert groups out there who've published numbers, and there's doctors differ, patients die. In my view, in the country of this size, we got to get up to 80,000 houses a year for 10, 12 years. And this brings in, an extra 800,000 to 1 million people into our economy between now and 2040. And Ireland has to grow. We have to expand our public services. We have to expand all utilities, services, and be much more strategic about it. We have not been strategic in the past. And I think we need to be in the future, and we certainly will be, if you look at Project Ireland 2040 and the expansion of Irish Water, and hopefully all the other utilities in parallel.
If we look west across the water and the results of the US election, where Donald Trump has really taken a majority in that, and a lot of commentators are saying the Democratic Party maybe lost sight of what the working class voter was looking for in terms of their message being delivered. When it comes to this general election campaign, albeit it's going to be a short one, do you think will housing be up there as that primary issue for people?
I think it is. I think it's housing, and I think it's money in pockets. People want to see more take-home pay and a better outcome at the end of the month when they look at the top line of the payslip to the bottom line of the payslip. And to that end, the most recent budget gave back a massive amount of money to a lot of people. And I'd love to see more of that over the next 2-3 years, because people need to be rewarded for the effort. And we're at full employment. Everyone's working hard, and they need to be rewarded for that. And America completely missed that trick. And that's why Trump is in the White House.
And as you look back yourself then, any kind of standout moments, both the good and the bad? We've had so much. We've had the RTE payment scandal and everything else that came within that. Brexit, of course, they were still very much managing Brexit and dealing with that. But anything else that stands out for yourself?
I thought Leo Varadkar did an outstanding job at putting Boris Johnson in his box and sorting out Brexit. And I really admire what he achieved when we went to Liverpool that time. And they nailed it on, got the deal done. And all of a sudden, Ireland had clarity on where we were going. And going back to Varadkar again, I think the biggest act of leadership this year was him deciding to leave politics and recognise that his time was perhaps done, and bring in someone like Simon Harris, who's put enormous energy into the country, and we could be in for a very good period coming forward.
Well, it depends, but because we've 3 weeks, it'll be very interesting to see how it turns out. Interestingly, you mentioned Leo Varadkar stepping aside. We could possibly see Boris Johnson back in some senior position again. He's not gone away yet anyway.
It's absolutely frightening. These guys, they never go away. But look, that's what you get, what you vote for. And I think we have an unbelievable opportunity here in the next few weeks to vote in the best people we can get our hands on.
Well, look at, of course, all across the Midlands there, some of the best candidates going up too. So people have their right to exercise their democratic vote as well. So we encourage everyone to get out and do that as well. Look at John, so much we could go through. Thank you for that quick review of the government's 5 terms, and we'll talk to you again soon. That's John Geoghegan there, spokesperson for investment development at Mullingar Chamber. But earlier Earlier on the show, I was speaking to Dr. Michelle Maher from See Her Elected, and we were talking about, the opportunity that's presented, particularly with co-option onto the county councils, if existing councillors are elected into the government as well, but the opportunity to put female candidates in there, because as well as bringing about all that good work and giving them a chance to grow a profile, what Michelle pointed out was quite a lot of females are actively and really heavily involved in our community and voluntary groups right across the Midlands, and that sometimes maybe their voice isn't being heard, and co-option is one way of getting them and of increasing that profile and increasing our awareness of the work that they do. And that work that our voluntary groups and community groups do was recognised in County Laois last night in a major event in the Midlands Park Hotel. And I'm delighted to be joined in studio now by John Oxley. John is the chairperson of the Laois Public Participation Network, or the PPN. Very good morning, John.
Thanks very much, Ronan.
You're looking fresh and well.
Absolutely, yeah. It's great driving up this morning to see all the, election posters on my way, so... It's like
they knew, isn't it?
Absolutely.
They've had so long. I suppose we say it's a 3-week campaign, and in theory it's been nearly gone on for 7 or 8 already, but such has been the activism. But last night the Laois Community and Voluntary Awards were held in the Midlands Park Hotel. Just give us a flavour of what took place.
I suppose, look, we were greeted with cameras Ceoltas on the way in. They were playing beautiful music, and we got our food orders, and then Suzanne O'Connor, the administrative officer of the community section in Laois County Council, started us off. Justin Tracy then was the MC of the night. Justin went through amazing, overview of what the volunteers are and what volunteerism means throughout the county. We then heard from Councillor Pádraig Fleming, who is the Cathaoirleach, and his brother Sean, Minister of State. Sean Fleming gave a speech. And then Simon Walton, who's the interim chief executive of Laois County Council, followed by myself. And I suppose after that we had Clive Davis and Carol Murphy, both from People's First Credit Union. Look, we had a beautiful dinner thanks to the Midlands Park Hotel. I had beef myself, so if anyone's interested. But look, we then went to the most important part, where we had 6 award categories: the Junior Volunteer, 9 Tidy Towns awards, and then obviously we finished up with the Unsung Hero, and PJ Phelan, congratulations to him, won that award.
Can you tell us a bit about PJ as well? What was it you think that set him apart last night?
I suppose, look, his commitment through the FLA and definitely bringing the FLA to County Laois was incredible back years ago. I suppose he's a very nice man. I know him through my own, personal dealings and stuff like that. So, congratulations to him, and definitely to all the other community groups that won awards. As I said, the money that was presented, it's something that I think a lot of community groups would really appreciate, because I suppose €250 or €500 will go towards insurance or putting petrol into the lawnmower or paying for signs. It's just small money and big money. It's great for local groups, and it's great to see that they're actually being recognised and awarded for the work that they put in.
And also the chance to celebrate amongst peers and like-minded people as well. You spoke about the kind of spirit of volunteerism there. You're the chairperson of the Laois PPN. What was it that drew you into that role and into volunteering?
I suppose, look, being involved in all these different organisations over the years and, trying to make them better and maybe leave my positive stamp and, getting them to a good level of, implementing policies to comply with the charities regulator, and I suppose just to make things are done right, and community groups have transparency is my biggest, my biggest impact I'd like to see of what I get involved in. But look, the PPN is is a great community organisation. I suppose it's 10 years since the PPNs were established nationally, and as you know, they're the main link between Laois County Council and the community groups of Laois. So I suppose, as I said last night, it was great to see so many groups represented as well. So a fun fact, I suppose, there's over 675 PPN member groups. So you can imagine if you have, maybe, for example, 5 people on a committee, and then you have, we'll do quick maths here now, 675 multiplied by 5, like that's 3,375. So look, 3,000 volunteers, it's saving, the government or the county councils lots of money from tidy towns, different social inclusion groups, that they're there to do stuff for the community and obviously make their lives and others a better place for them. So
and even that number is probably just a conservative estimate of the overall number of people volunteering. So the likes of the PPN then play a crucial role. You mentioned about governance and that, because it's just probably getting more onerous and difficult year on year for groups to just make sure everything, with the best will in the world, that all the boxes are ticked and all the I's are dotted, so the PPN can play a big role in that.
Well, that's right. Currently you have Dan Borgan and Magella Moore, who are in the PPN office in County Laois. So they are available to help community groups, I suppose, write grants, to be there if they have questions, or if community groups break down. They're always on hand to, I suppose, help community groups get grants, to let people know that grants are available, and I suppose just to be there to give a helping hand and to, I suppose, make Laois a better place, because as you can imagine, it is a great county, really and truly. And
from yourself, I know you're based near Abbey Leaks too, and you mentioned how the community and lots of our, even a lot of the public functions, they can't really operate without the work of these support groups as well. The majority then of all those groups, the spread of them and the diversity of them must be extremely vast.
Well, you look at Abbey Leaks, for example, the Tidy Towns, the Bog Project, and then moving into other categories, even from the awards, was the Midlands LGBTQ and Laois Pride and all these other community residents associations. And obviously then you have the likes of the Unsung Hero Award and Young Volunteers. So even youth coming up, it's great to see that they are being recognised as well. So I suppose, look, as we all know, the awards were hosted by Laois County Council and in collaboration with the Laois PPN to recognise and to celebrate the community groups and volunteers within Laois, and obviously our main sponsor, People First Credit Union, and just a word to say thanks very much to them, and indeed to the judges who came from all over the country, from Roscommon to Meath, Waterford. They gave up their time to review the applications, to actually go through all of the different steps and to pick the winners. As I said last night, it's obviously a very difficult task. And then I suppose most importantly to thank the staff members of Laois County Council, because I suppose they put in so much hard work for the event, but even coming up to the event. For example, Pamela Tynan said it was since February this event starts planning. So it's such a great organisation, and the PPN is a great place to be for community groups. So
it must be very encouraging to see the youth getting involved too, younger people actually taking, because there's often that narrative, the youth won't do anything, they're only stuck at home on their devices. Are you seeing different with the PPN?
I think so, yeah. As I said, last night there was, there could have been maybe 20 volunteers who were represented for the youth category, and every single one of them, just even chatting to them there last night, ranging from all these different community projects that they've done, volunteerism that they took part in. It's great to see, and I think Laois is certainly in a safe place for the future with all these young people coming up. And again, it's great to see the parents, as speakers last night had explained. It's not just the volunteers who are actually volunteering, it's the people that's, say, left at home to, I suppose, to look after the house or to continue with running the family stuff. And, parents bringing young people into, I suppose, meetings and bringing them to different community groups that are involved in. So, look, it's not just the volunteers themselves, it's the families, and it's the support that the families offer these young people, and indeed older people and everyone involved in community groups.
And so, the old saying goes, it takes a village, and I think there's not a village, a town or a community out there that doesn't have a voluntary group that's doing the work. And if people are listening, they want to get involved, there's so many organisations, even through the PPN or your various volunteer groups that can connect you with those, link you with groups as well. And don't be shy. If you want to volunteer, just stick your head out and go and do it, because you can see last night there in the Midlands Park, it is worth it, especially when you get that recognition and that network and sharing with your peers as well. John Oxley, PPN chairperson for County Laois, thank you so much for coming in this morning.
Ronan, thank you.
I'm just going to draw our attention to one other award winner recently. The Heritage Hero 2024 has been announced, and this year's recipient is James Scully, for his work over a long number of years advocating for heritage of the inland waterways and sites around Banagher in County Offaly. And if you've ever had the privilege or the pleasure of listening to James tell you stories or take you on a guided tour, you'll know exactly maybe why he was the recipient of that award. So congratulations to him too, and to all the winners in the awards last night there in Laois. I mean, a fantastic occasion and showcasing the Laois Community and Voluntary Awards and the activity that people are doing. And that is it from me for Saturday View this morning. Thank you as always for tuning in, and thank you for your texts as well. Lorraine McCormick will be here next with Feel Good Saturday. I'll talk to you all soon. Massive thanks to Nelly as always for helping put the whole thing together and keep the show on the road. And I'll talk to you all soon. Take care.
Saturday View, with thanks to Lumcloon Energy, pioneering innovation, powering progress. lumcloonenergy.com.
Midlands 103.